You've probably heard this before. There's no evidence for God. It's the ultimate conversation stopper. It's the ace up the sleeve. You're at a dinner party, the candles are burning low, the wine is flowing, or maybe you're just doom scrolling through a comment section at 2 a.m., and someone drops that line like a gavel. I only believe in things I can prove. I only believe in evidence. But what if that statement, as confident as it sounds, misunderstands what evidence even is? What if the person saying it isn't actually being scientific, but is just wearing a lab coat to hide a philosophy? Imagine a detective walking into a crime scene. It's a cold case. He steps into the room. He sees a body on the floor. He sees a shattered window with glass spread across the carpet like diamonds. He sees muddy footprints leading out the door, fading into the rain. But he doesn't find a fingerprint. He sweeps the whole room, dusts every surface, checks the door handles, checks the glass, and finds absolutely nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA. So he turns to his partner, shrugs his shoulders, and says, well, there's no evidence that a killer was here. The window must have shattered itself. The mud must have crawled in on its own. The victim must have just died of natural causes. You would fire that detective immediately. Why? Because fingerprints aren't the only kind of evidence. The shattered window is evidence. The footprints are evidence. The body itself is evidence. When the skeptic says there's no evidence for God, they are usually acting like that bad detective. They are looking for a very specific kind of evidence to the exclusion of everything else. They are looking for a physical object. They want to find God under a microscope. They want to find God in a telescope. They want a piece of the Creator that they can weigh on a scale or dissolve in a test tube. We have to understand the difference between scientific testing and philosophical reasoning. These are two different toolboxes, and if you bring the wrong toolbox to the job, you aren't going to fix anything. You're just going to break the machine. Science is the study of the mechanism. It explains how the machine works. Think of it this way. Imagine you walk into a kitchen and you see a kettle boiling on the stove. The whistle is screaming, steam is shooting out, and you ask, why is the water boiling? A scientist could answer that question perfectly. He could say, the water is boiling because the combustion of the gas transfers heat energy to the metal, which excites the water molecules, causing them to move rapidly and turn into gas. That is a true statement. It is a scientific statement, but it isn't the whole truth. Because there is another answer. The water is boiling because I want a cup of tea. The scientific answer explains the mechanism. The second answer explains the agency. It explains the intent. If you only look at the mechanics, the heat, the molecules, the metal, you will never find the desire for tea. You will never find the person who turned the stove on. Science can explain everything about the how, but it is paralyzed when it comes to the why. This is the category error that atheism often makes. They demand material proof for an immaterial being. They want to find the architect hiding inside the drywall, and when they don't find him, they declare that the house built itself. So let's put away the microscope for a second. Let's pick up the logic. Let's look at the house we live in, the universe itself, and ask the most dangerous question of all. Where did it come from? There is a law in science called the second law of thermodynamics. It sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple. It's the law of entropy. It means that things run down, energy spreads out, things go from order to disorder. Think of the universe like a giant wind-up clock. Every second that passes, the universe is burning up energy. Stars are burning out. Heat is dissipating. The clock is winding down. Now here is the problem. If the universe were eternal, if it had no beginning, then it would have been existing for an infinite amount of time before today. But if you have an infinite past, then the clock should have been wound down a long time ago. If the candle has been burning forever, it should have burned out by now. You cannot traverse an infinite number of days to get to today. It's like trying to jump out of a bottomless pit. You'd never reach the rim. The fact that the clock is still ticking, the fact that the sun is still burning, proves that the universe hasn't been here forever. It had a beginning. Logic dictates that whatever begins to exist has a cause. Things don't just pop into existence out of nothing. Magic isn't real. If I told you that my car just appeared in my driveway this morning without a factory or a delivery truck, you would think I was insane. And yet, the materialist view asks us to believe that the entire universe, every star, every atom, every law of physics just popped into existence. Without a cause, without a reason, just a cosmic accident that happened to result in Beethoven and quantum mechanics. That is a logical impossibility. If the universe had a beginning, something had to begin it. And here is where the logic gets tight. Whatever created the universe must be outside of the universe. If you build a computer, you aren't inside the computer, you are outside of it. You are not made of code, you are the coder. So the cause of the universe must be outside of time, which means he is timeless. He must be outside of space, which means he is spaceless. He must be outside of matter, which means he is immaterial. And he must be incredibly powerful to create everything from nothing. Spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful. That sounds a lot like God. We didn't get there by reading a holy book. We got there by looking at a clock. But the skeptic will say, maybe the universe is just a cycle. Maybe it bounces back and forth forever. Okay, let's play that game. Let's look at the argument from contingency. Everything we see in the world is what philosophers call contingent. That means it depends on something else to exist. Take a cloud. A cloud cannot exist on its own. It depends on water vapor. The water vapor depends on temperature and air pressure. The air pressure depends on gravity. The gravity depends on mass. Every link in the chain is holding up the one below it. But here is the question: what is holding up the whole chain? You can't have an infinite chain of hanging links. If every link is depending on the one above it, eventually you have to reach a hook. You have to reach something that is attached to the ceiling, something that holds itself up. If you don't have a hook, the whole chain falls. If there is no God, if there is no necessary being who exists by his own power, then why is there anything at all? Why is there something rather than nothing? The atheist has to look at this infinite chain of dependent reality and say, it's just hanging from nothing. That isn't science, that is magic. And then there is the precision, the fine-tuning. Imagine you are dragged before a firing squad. 100 trained marksmen aim their rifles at your chest from 10 yards away. The order is given. Fire! The guns roar. You squeeze your eyes shut, waiting for the end. But you open them, and you're still alive. Every single bullet missed. Now, do you walk away saying, wow, what a lucky coincidence? Do you say, well, if they hadn't missed, I wouldn't be here to wonder about it? No. You assume it was rigged. You assume someone paid them off. You assume intent. The universe is that firing squad. The laws of physics are balanced on a razor's edge. If the force of gravity were slightly stronger, the universe would have collapsed into a black hole before life began. If it were slightly weaker, stars would never have formed. If the electromagnetic force were slightly different, atoms wouldn't hold together. The dials of the universe are set to a precision of 1 in a trillion trillion. The atheist looks at this firing squad, sees that every bullet missed, and calls it luck. The believer calls it a plan. And this brings us to the biggest secret of all. Atheism tries to present itself as the default position. They try to say, I'm just the guy who doesn't believe in fairy tales. I'm neutral. But that's a lie. Atheism isn't neutral. Atheism is a claim. It is the specific, positive claim that the material world is the only thing that exists. It is the claim that there is no supernatural, no soul, and no afterlife. Saying, I don't believe in God, doesn't free you from metaphysics. It just commits you to a different one. You are betting your life on the idea that matter is all there is. But think about what that actually means. If your brain is just a collection of atoms, if your thoughts are just chemical fizz, why should you trust them? Evolution cares about survival. It doesn't care about truth. If you see a tiger in the grass, it doesn't matter if you understand the biology of the tiger, it only matters that you run. If our brains are just survival engines, we have no reason to trust that our logic is actually true. We're just wet robots programmed to reproduce. It takes just as much faith to be an atheist as it does to be a Christian, maybe more. Because the Christian looks at the digital code in DNA and sees a coder. The atheist looks at the code and sees a glitch. The Christian looks at the fine-tuning of the universe, the fact that gravity is exactly strong enough to hold stars together but not so strong that it crushes them, and sees a dial that was set by a hand. The atheist looks at the dial and says, it just happened to be that way. Who is really being rational here? If you walked into a room and saw a safe that had been cracked, and the combination was a specific sequence of 50 numbers, would you assume that a thief figured it out? Or would you assume the wind just blew the dial around until it clicked? Belief in God isn't about abandoning logic, it's about following logic to its inevitable conclusion. So let's go back to our crime scene. The bad detective said there was no evidence because he couldn't find a fingerprint. But the good detective, the one who really wants the truth, he turns off the lights. He turns on the UV scanner, and suddenly the room lights up. He sees the patterns, he sees the trail. He realizes that the evidence was there the whole time. He just needed the right tool to see it. We have used the tool of logic. We have used the tool of causality. We have used the tool of design, and we have seen that the universe demands a creator. But there is one more piece of evidence, and it's the one that makes people the most uncomfortable. If there is a creator, if there is an architect, then this isn't just a house, it's a kingdom, and kingdoms have laws. If belief in God is at least rationally permissible, the next question is far more dangerous, because if God exists, then we aren't just biology drifting through space, we are moral agents, we are responsible. Atheism promises you freedom. It promises you a world where you make your own rules. But morality doesn't behave the way atheism expects it to. We all feel it. We all know that some things are truly good and some things are truly evil. But if there is no God, those words don't mean anything. So why do we act like they do? Let's talk about that.